From Trump tariffs to the Tianjin troika, does the Modi-Xi-Putin pow-wow mean more than a photo op? And after the SCO Summit and China's military parade, can India's eastern outreach force a rethink in the West on sanctions? Hello and welcome. This is Worldview at The Hindu and I'm Suhasini Haidar. Even just a few months ago, it would have been difficult to imagine the bonhomie on display in Tianjin as Prime Minister Narendra Modi laughed and joked with Chinese President Xi and Russian President Vladimir Putin in a powwow at the SCO Summit that made headlines around the world. But that's not just all that happened this week and was messaging to the West. To begin with, Modi held bilateral talks with Xi for the first time since October. The readouts issued referred to India and China as partners, not rivals. It noted that after disengagement between the militaries, border management mechanisms are being now discussed by special representatives Wang Yi and Ajit Doval. Listen in.
सीमा पर डिसएंगेजमेंट के बाद शांति और स्थिरता का माहौल बना हुआ है। हमारे स्पेशल रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स के बीच बॉर्डर मैनेजमेंट के संबंध में सहमति बनी।
They discussed normalization of visas, flights and trade.
We must also step up to our historic responsibility to uphold multilateralism, work together to bring about a multipolar world and more democracy in international relations, and to make true contributions to peace, prosperity in Asia and around the world.
And then they agreed on the need for a multipolar world order. Significantly, the readouts from both the MEA and the Chinese MFA said that India and China pursue strategic autonomy. Their relations should not be seen through a third country lens, a reference clearly to the US. They didn't, however, refer to a number of contentious issues between them, including the de-escalation and demobilization of troops at the line of actual control, dismantling of buffer zones, or what are called no-patrol zones, and Chinese infrastructure to take the situation back to status quo ante, as it's called, April 2020. They didn't discuss China's support to Pakistan, particularly after the Pahalgam terror attacks and during Operation Sindoor, clearly a contentious issue there. They didn't discuss recent issues over Tibet and the Dalai Lama's reincarnation. This seldom makes it to bilateral readouts, but it had been highlighted during the Tibetan leader's 90th birthday celebrations. And they didn't discuss Taiwan, China's demand that India acknowledge a one China policy, which was an issue when the foreign ministers met just a few weeks ago. So after that meeting with Xi Jinping, Prime Minister Modi also met with Russian President Putin separately as they discussed Putin's visit to Delhi in December, India's oil imports from Russia, the US tariffs, and the Ukraine conflict. And very notably, they shared a car ride together, and it seemed to also be a significant message to Washington. Putin himself said that Modi and Xi could not be seen bowing to the US, and the US should understand that.
If one of them shows weakness, his political career will be over, so that influences his behavior. Just as the colonial era is now over, they have to realize that they cannot use this tone in speaking with their partners. But ultimately, things will be sorted out.
Third, all the leaders then, including the leaders of Pakistan, Iran, Belarus, Central Asian countries, then attended the SCO Summit. The declaration, of course, included references to both the Pahalgam attack, two terror attacks in Balochistan and Pakistan, and all, including India, condemned the US and Israel's strikes on Iran, as well as the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. So a kind of subtle messaging of unity there for the West. Modi skipped the SCO Plus summit, which included some of India's neighbors and some global South countries, which was a miss. But there, Xi Jinping unveiled what he called China's vision for a 5-point global governance initiative. Now, it is unclear if India would be a part of that. But it certainly seemed to be a way of China putting out a counter to the Western order. And fifth, the scene then shifted to Beijing. Prime Minister Modi had left by then, but China hosted a massive military parade there in Beijing for the leaders there. They were joined by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un as well. Next week may see some more aggravation for America, with Brazil planning a BRICS summit to discuss tariffs online as well. The photo ops from China certainly created headlines and some backlash in Washington. Here's Trump's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, who's become famous for his attacks on India.
It was a shame to see Modi getting in bed as the leader of the biggest democracy in the world with the two biggest authoritarian dictators in the world, in Putin and Xi Jinping. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure what he's thinking, particularly since India has been in a cold war and sometimes a hot war with China for decades.
Meanwhile, Trump himself continued his tariffs and his tirade against India, defended his actions in a petition at the US Supreme Court that said it was necessary to bring peace in Ukraine through such measures, and he promised more.
Would you say that putting secondary sanctions on India, the largest purchaser outside of China, they're almost equal, would you say there was no action? That cost hundreds of billions of dollars to Russia. You call that no action? And I haven't done phase 2 yet or phase 3. But when you say there's no action, I think you ought to get yourself a new job, because if you remember 2 weeks ago I said, if India buys, India's got big problems, and that's what happened. So don't tell me about that.
And then there was this Truth Social post that Trump put out.
So while Modi's photo ops in China were a direct challenge, the government also worked the phones with its Western allies to keep the lines open. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal said talks with the US continue and could still yield a free trade agreement deal by November. Modi's visit to Japan held out the hope for the Quad Summit later this year. He hoped to see the Japanese Prime Minister in India. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, significantly, he didn't actually travel to China, officials said, for personal health reasons, but he was on the telephone as well, spoke with the Finnish Foreign Minister, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister. He also met with the German Foreign Minister, Vadeful, in Delhi. So the question is Modi's China visit, the three-way handshake with Xi and Putin, more than a message for Washington? Now, there's been a lot of talk about this, and I'll just give you my view and why it perhaps does not mean that much more as people are guessing. First, the Modi-Xi meeting has been in the works for some time. It is part of normalizing tense ties between India and China. So to read too much into it would be a mistake. The second, the tri-leader photo may have been a start, but the real question is, will it actually lead to a revival of the trilateral, the engagement between Russia, India and China? And remember, that has not happened since 2016. So is this going to actually mean a larger shift? The third question really is that despite the bilateral troubles with the United States, other official exchanges, military exercises, for example, in Alaska have continued. And in the next few weeks, all eyes will be on whether the Quad can still be held. Maybe if Australia and Japan can play a role in bringing Trump to India, that could change a lot. The US and China are India's two biggest trading partners. They're both at about $130 billion each. So it's not really possible to say you can replace one with the other or substitute one with the other right now, given those numbers. India will need both, including European Union for trade, Russia for oil, in order to grow. So its geopolitical moves, in a sense, are quite locked in with these economic parameters. And fifth, much of the anger with the US is over its ties with Pakistan. President Trump hosting General Asif Munir for lunch, for example, also Trump's counter-narrative over Operation Sindoor. But in this, it's important to recognize that China has much closer ties with Pakistan, including during Operation Sindoor. And of course, Pakistan was there at the SCO Summit, and General Munir also came for that military parade. India's ties with global powers, in fact, have always been about balance, non-alignment, strategic autonomy. So SCO and BRICS, in a sense, balances Quad and Indo-Pacific moves. The meeting in Tianjin may have been part of restoring one side of the equation while still working, it's a work in progress, on the other side, perhaps in the near future in Delhi. So what's Worldview's take? If India's closeness with the US is about values and more contemporary history, its ties with China and even Russia are driven by ancient history, contiguous geographies. For India to regain its positions with both and to retain its own agency, it needs to keep following a threefold path. And we've spoken about this before on Worldview. Keep the balance in engaging all global powers. Be mindful of the global South's values and priorities. And most importantly, keep your neighbors close. So let's get you some Worldview reading recommendations. And I know I missed out last week, so I have a few more this week. To begin with, we're very proud at The Hindu to have brought out this edition. It's a collection of essays called China, Indian Perspectives on China's Politics, Economy and Foreign Relations. It's published by The Hindu, edited by Anant Krishnan. Then there's The Revenge of Geography. I've spoken about it very often, by Robert Kaplan. Please do read that. Then there's the trilogy Power of Geography, Prisoners of Geography, Future of Geography by Tim Marshall. Very easy to read. A new book, another anthology of essays, is called Whither India-Pakistan Relations Today. This is edited by former Ambassador Surendra Kumar, but it's really got a whole plethora of experts in it. And finally, along with the reading recommendations, some listening recommendations. I have 3 podcasts I think you might enjoy listening to. One is The Core with Pooja Mehra, speaking to me about what caused the India-US rifts. What's the speculation there? The second, Trump tariffs, how can India gain from a pivot to China? G. Sampath at The Hindu speaks to analyst Cameron Johnson. And remember, this is The Hindu's In Focus podcast. There's another episode of The Hindu's In Focus podcast called Modi-Xi at Tianjin. SCO Summit, does it signal a shift in momentum for India-China ties? And that's a conversation between Sampath, Anant Krishnan, and myself. So I hope you enjoy reading and listening to all of these. Do join us again here on Worldview from the team. Thanks for watching.